Hello and welcome to the Web Intersect 2.0 Social Network Website Building Series, in which you can learn how to build the foundation of a custom-made social site that you can expand with your own custom applications after you go through the series and get your foundation laid out. In this first video, I'm going to talk for just a quick minute about some important things that you may want to know before this series begins, then we'll jump right into production of the site. This series will move faster than the last social community series we offered 3 or 4 years ago. This series will also replace and completely deprecate the older series of videos because 3 or 4 years ago we were using standard code that was standard then that has now been replaced by cool things like HTML5 and CSS3 that weren't available back then. We're also going to use MySQLi this time around instead of MySQL. And that'll give you better database performance in your scripts. Alright, now let's take a look at the hot points of what we're going to be covering. We'll be covering a little bit more than what you see here, but these are just the major applications that we'll be showing you how to produce. Now in this first video, I'm going to start with the HTML5 plus PHP website template design and construction, and we'll make sure that it validates 100% all through production. That way you can show your viewers or your site users that you know what you're doing with your code. Then we're going to move along to database creation and the table structure for any information storage that we need on the site. We'll also have register, login, logout, and all of the initial forms that you'll need for your site. And these next 5 things are things that were highly requested by you guys, the viewers, who had gone through the last lesson series. You were asking for things that were not shown in that lesson series, like a new type of friend system. Then another thing that is really highly requested by you guys is the conversation system, really the blab system completed. So what will happen is, if say I'm your friend on the site, I'll be able to go to your profile and say what's up to you. I'll be like, hey, what's up, dude? And then you can reply to me directly under where I made my comment to you. So it'll work like the Google Plus or Twitter or Facebook conversation systems on the wall. Because a lot of you guys requested to see how do you let somebody comment on another person's profile, and how do you reply to that comment that they made, and how do you let others just join in the conversation if they see it and they happen to be your friend. We're going to cover all those things in the new conversation system. We'll also have a notifications system, and you guys know what that is. Anytime something happens on the site that you might need to be notified about, we'll send a notification to the database for you, and then when you come to the site next, you'll see all your notifications for all the activity that's happened that you might be concerned with. And you guys also asked for photo gallery system, and I can show you how to do that. It's very simple to set up a gallery system for your users, since each person gets a folder when their profile is created or their account is created on your site, and we can easily put more folders into that folder for their galleries. So we'll let them upload pictures, and if they want, they can also start galleries, and we'll just magically create folders using PHP when they want to go start a new gallery. And then finally, we'll cover a block member system, because some people will be annoying to other people on your site, and you'll want to give your users the ability to block annoying people. So those are the major things that we'll show throughout the lesson series, and by no means will it be a complete, super polished, ready to go site, but it'll show you the foundations of building your own social site from scratch, so you can get your own custom applications and have a really unique feel to your social adventure that you offer to people. Alright, let's rock and roll. We're going to start with the website template design and construction. We're going to use HTML5, CSS or CSS3, whatever you fancy, and PHP to make smart region templates for the header of the site and the footer and any other sections that might be the same on all the pages. And we'll make sure that it validates 100% all through production. Okay, I have my header graphics already created for the site, and if you need video tutorials about how to make vector graphics for the web, you can check out my Fireworks playlist on YouTube. It'll show you how to use Fireworks to create vector graphics the way I do. And it's important for you guys to realize that you don't have to use Fireworks. You can use Photoshop, Illustrator, GIMP, or any graphics editor that you feel most comfortable with, okay? So don't give me a hard time about what graphics editor I choose to use. Just use whatever the hell you want and leave me be with the graphics editor that I enjoy using. You can use whatever you want. I'm not trying to push any Adobe tools on you guys or anything. Alright, so like I said, if you want to understand how to create vector graphics the way I do in Fireworks, you can watch all of my Fireworks vector tutorials on YouTube. So I'm not going to bore people or waste anybody's time with showing them how I made any of these graphics here. You can see I can just move them around. They're just shapes placed there. That's just text placed there. And this is just my little logo thing. You can see under it there's a half a black shape for the bottom portion, and then on top there's a faded white shape, okay? So you can see how it gives it a little depth in there. Now this is the color palette that I choose to work with. I'm going to use shades of white and gray. I'm going to use shades of this color green, and I'm also going to have blue because all of my links are going to be blue. So I'm going to throw blue into the design as well, okay? Now what I'm going to do is take these three shapes here. What I have is one rectangle, one little line shape, you can see it there, and then a rectangle on top. Let me put those back. I'm going to take them just as they're sitting there, Control C, go to File, New, OK, and Paste. Now fit canvas, and then go to canvas size, and let's go ahead and change the width to, you can make it as small as 4 pixels if you want, but I'll just make it 10 pixels. OK. And so you can see I have just a sliver now that I'm going to use CSS code to make it repeat. I'm going to make that sliver repeat all throughout my header. That way I can have really light loading graphics that'll load really fast, take up a lot of space in the page. Basically it'll repeat all through the width of the user's browser window in the header. Now go to your desktop real quick because you're going to need a new folder for your website. And you can just name it. Name that folder whatever your website is named. Maybe you don't want any spaces in there, you can put a little underscore. So mine is Web Intersect. And then double click inside of that folder and you'll see it's empty. And the first thing you want to do is put a new folder inside of it called root. And that's going to be your root, or your public HTML folder where your index file will live inside of that root folder. And then we'll make another folder next to the root folder and we'll name that source imagery. And you can save the imagery that you're working on, maybe all the PNG source for the imagery that you're working on, inside of this folder. That way you never lose the initial files that you're working with for your graphics and stuff. You can save them all right there. And then your root system will be right here where your index file and everything will live in there. Okay, you got it? So now let's go to File and export this little sliver for the header. Continue. The web, continue. Exit. And then I'm going to save mine as a PNG 32. Export. And you go into your site folder for your new website. And in the root folder, where your index file and all your pages are going to live, basically, we're going to have a new folder. Call that Style. That's going to be for all your CSS style sheets and all your style graphics. So you double click inside of Style now, and you're going to save this as header sliver. So it'll be header sliver.png. Save. And you can actually close that now. Now let's check what the height of these shapes are going to be for the header sliver, and that's going to be 90. So what I'll do now is take my little logo icon, Control C, and go to File, New, and instead of the height being 96, I'm going to make sure the height is 90. OK, and I'm going to leave the canvas transparent like that. OK, press Control V, and then I'll just try to put it in the center the best I can. If I needed to move it around later or whatever, I can change the graphic and re-output the PNG and replace it on the web and fix it up. So let's take a look. Maybe it needs to be a little higher. 1, 2, right about there. File, Export Wizard, Continue, Continue, Exit. And let's make this PNG 32 as well with a transparent matte. Export. And we're going to put this in the images folder. So we don't have one of those yet. All we have is a style folder in our root public HTML. So far all we have is style. So let's go ahead and put an images folder because we're going to need that. And in the images folder, let's just name this logo .png. It'll be a .png. You save. Now you have, let's see what we have here in our folder system. We have our root, or our public HTML, And then we have our style and images folder inside of that. And shortly we'll have an index page here next to these two folders. In your images folder you have your logo, and in the style folder you have your header sliver. Okay, you can go ahead and close that untitled file now. And this little guy should be the last graphics I need, because these are all just going to be text or buttons that I create through CSS. This is all going to be HTML CSS rendered, and actually I'm going to need this one too. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to save these items. I'm going to go Control C, File, New, OK, pop it into place. Make sure canvas fit is tight. Make sure it's PNG with no canvas, transparent canvas. File, Export Wizard, Continue, blah blah blah. Go through all that. Go to PNG 32, matte transparent, export, and then put that in the images as well. Call it the home. So it'll be home.png, save. And I'm going to do the same exact thing for this little magnifying glass here that's going to be used for my search mechanism. And I'm also going to show you guys how to put a search page in place. Maybe I might show you how to make a search page using Google Custom Search Engine, but I won't make any promises on that. That way you don't have to program anything, and Google Search is a really smart search with nice algorithms. Really indexes your site well and pulls the appropriate data out when people search. It works really well on developphp.com, adamkhoury.com, anywhere I have it in place. It works really well. I might show you guys how to do that, whatever. And another important aspect of this whole training series is that you have to be on a live server with your website online. You gotta buy a .com. You can have free hosting. Usually most hosts will offer free hosting packages if you buy the .com. Or maybe if you buy hosting they offer you free .com. Usually some deal like that. But usually for $10 or whatever you can get started. So I'm not going to recommend that anybody use WAMP, LAMP, or XAMPP or any locally driven systems that are on their local computer. I would like anybody following this series to work directly online on the actual site that they're going to be running. That way there's no conflicts at all when it comes time to migrate the site from local to the real live server. You're going to be working on the live server the whole time. There won't be any conflicts, no migration issues, okay? And that's why we do that. Okay, so that takes care of all the work we'll have to do in a graphics editor for now. Now you'll want to open up your code editor. And whichever code editor you choose to use is just fine. I happen to be using Adobe Dreamweaver CS5. I don't care what code editor you use, and I don't recommend any over any others. You can use Notepad++, BV Edit, whatever the hell you want to use. Alright, so create a new PHP file. And we're going to just save this right off the bat. In your website folder, go to root, and right here in the root folder with the images folder and the styles folder, you're going to name this index. This is your home page. So you have index.php ready to go. Go ahead and just remove all of that code, because if you look at that code, it's using XHTML 1.0 transitional. So that's like HTML4, and we're able to use HTML5 now and everything validate. So we might as well use HTML5 and get rid of this HTML4. In order to do that, we can just run to developphp.com. So you go to developphp.com. In the HTML section, I have a couple of pages that have a skeleton for an HTML web page before you put any content in it. So I'm going to grab that right here. And this is under the HTML primary elements page. So under the HTML primary elements page, just grab that code right there. Control C, go into your document that's index.php, Control V. Okay, so let's just make the title. Now in the head element, you're going to want, let's put it right under the title. Let's put style element. Style, type, text CSS. Make sure you go down a couple of lines and close your style element. Now we have a place to put all of our CSS. Now where this H2 element is, let's get rid of that and just place a div. This div, let's give it an ID equal to page top. Now while we're at it, let's just go ahead and add two more divs. 1, 2. This one we'll call page middle, and this one page bottom. So basically you have your header, footer, and your page content areas. Alright, let's target the page top div with our CSS. So we can put a pound sign and that ID to target that element. Open the curly brace, go down, close with the closing curly brace. And the first thing we know that it must have a height of 90 pixels because that is the size that our little sliver was. And let's make sure that sliver is in there as a background. So background, URL, go to your style folder and header sliver, PNG. Put space, repeat, and let's make sure we repeat X. Repeat X is repeat across the horizontal plane. Repeat Y is repeating a graphic on the vertical plane. So we just wanted to make sure. It'll do it by default, but we just put this in here to make sure it repeats. It will do it by default though. You really don't even need that there, and it will repeat by itself. Alright, so we press Control S, and if you want to view this in your favorite browser now, you can look at it and you can see that the header graphics are in place, that sliver. Now we want to make sure, you saw how that space was around the page, that marginal space around my header graphics. I don't like that, so what I'm going to do is make the body, I'm going to target the body element and make it have a margin of 0 pixels all the way around, top, right, bottom, and left. That way when I look at it in the browser now, it's perfect. It goes all the way and it fills all the space there. Now all I have to do is put my little logo in place where I want it. And we're going to need a new div inside of page top. It's going to be 1000 pixels wide. And what will happen is, let's look at this in the browser. You can see my browser window is 1600 pixels wide because that's the screen resolution that I have. So my header graphics repeat all the way through those 1600 pixels, no matter how many pixels it is. But what I want is in the center of the page is a 1000 width div, so that way I can have my logo about right here, and then maybe search over here and login links over here and stuff. But you could have everything spread way out to where your logo is way over here and your search is over there. But I want to constrain mine to the middle of the page. And by the way, we'll be taking all of this CSS within this style element and we'll be putting it in a .css style sheet to externalize it when we're done. So inside of the page top, let's indent with 2 spaces, and then let's put div and close the div. Let's give it an ID equal to page top wrap. So all we need is CSS rule for that, page top wrap. So let's grab that ID and we can say page top wrap. So inside of your ID of page top, you target ID page top wrap, and you give it the CSS properties that you want. First thing I know I want is a width of 1000 pixels. But like I said, you can make yours 100% and it'll be all the way across. And actually, if you're going to do that, you don't even need this page top wrap. You can just put everything in page top because it's already 100% across. And we have to make sure we set the margin to 0 pix auto. And what that does is it sets the top and bottom margins to 0 pixels and the right and left margins to auto. That way it centers that div. And I can show you what I mean by giving this a border. Let's give it a border color, some bright color, 1 pixel dashed. And I'm just putting this border here so you can actually see it. And let's give it a height of 90 pixels, just like the page top div. Now if we go to our browser and we refresh the page, you can see it's a div 1000 pixels wide directly in the center of my header graphics. And I want my logo right about here, and I want my search over here, login links here, and I'm going to want my main menu links to be next to my logo here on this bottom bar. So I can remove that dashed line because I just wanted to show you guys how it's going to show up there, or where it's going to be positioned. So let's remove that border. And now we're going to need one more for the logo. So let's just copy that CSS rule. Let's get rid of all this. And let's go into a child div of page top wrap that we can name page top logo. So if we take this div, we can just copy this div, go inside of it, down a couple of lines, open it up, indent 2 spaces, and put a new div and call it page top logo. So inside of page top you have page top wrap, and then inside of page top wrap you have page top logo, and we're also going to put some other divs inside of page top wrap, because remember, page top wrap is this div that is 1,000 pixels wide. It's just going to be containing all the other divs that we want inside of there that are holding all the elements within our header. So inside of the page top logo rule, we're going to add the background URL image that's within our images folder of logo.png. And you can make that height of 90 because that's the height that the image has, 90 pixels. So let's go to the browser and see what we have. Refresh. You can see it's repeating through there, so let's make sure we have no repeat in the background property. Space, no repeat. Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to make it an actual image tag. Instead of having a background in there, I'm going to go into page top logo right here, and I'm going to put image. And for the source attribute, I'm just going to browse for that image logo, because I want that to be an actual image that is indexed within search engines and things like that, or just an image that people can grab if they want. Control S, and let's give this an alt attribute. That way our code validates when we go to check it. You can just name that logo or web intersect logo, whatever you want. Now if we look at that, we can see we just have the one there, and we just want to make sure that that div, let's go check the width of that image. The width is, it's 108 width by 90 height. So I can go and give that a 108 width as well. 108 pixels. Now if I look at the page, it looks the same, but when I put any other content containers up in the page top wrap, they'll just go next to that div because we'll float all of them inside of there. So we'll maybe float 3 divs. This div should be floating actually. Page top logo, let's make it float left. And that's how you can make divs be horizontally right next to one another in an area of the page. If you don't do that, they'll stack on top of each other horizontally going down the page, but you want them to stack next to each other vertically going across. So you can float each one left that's inside of the page top wrap. Okay, so down in the page top logo div, the image element we have, we can also give that a title, and we can say web intersect 2.0. And now we're going to wrap that in an A element. So what we can do is bring this div down, and inside of that div we know we have to indent our image tag, and then wrapped around that image tag we're going to put an A element. That way it's a link to our home page. A href http ://www.yourdomain. And in a moment we'll put this online and we'll actually validate it through the online validation service, the official place to check your code validation online. And if there's any little syntax mistakes or whatever, we'll fix it right up, but I don't think we'll have any problems. So now if we press Control S and save, and we refresh our browser view of this, we should have a link. And when we go over that icon or that logo, it says Web Intersect 2.0. So now you have your header graphics in place, your logo is in place, and you know you can float any other divs right next to this logo div across the page this way within that 1000 width page top wrap container. So let's make a div that floats right next to page top logo, and we'll call it page top rest. And that'll hold the rest of your page top content, because I'm just going to put 2 divs in there and they'll stack horizontally automatically, so that'll take care of that. And I'll show you what I mean. So all I need is a div called page top rest. So let's take this one, page top logo. Let's go right next to page top logo inside of page top wrap, and let's place that new div, and let's make it say page top rest instead of page top logo. Now since our wrap is 1000 pixels wide and the logo within it is 108 pixels wide, this width could be 892, I think. Now let's just give it a background color temporarily just to see where we're working. Let's give it this light gray. Now let's view this in the browser. Refresh. That's just about right. Now I know everything that I put in there will be just right, because I'm going to have 2 divs inside of this container, that little gray container there, that new one we just put in. One div is going to rest in that top bar, and the other div is going to rest right under it in that bottom bar, so I'll have space to put all my junk. And I'll show you what I mean right now. Let's go inside of page top rest, indent twice, and put 2 divs. And we can make their heights virtually the same. So to target those 2 divs in your CSS, just copy this, go down here, and we're going to go into page top rest. Any divs, any div elements within page top rest will be affected by this CSS. So what we could do is see how they stack up by giving them a certain height. Say we give them 45 each, or let's say 42 each, something like that. They don't have to float left because they're going to stack horizontally, their default behavior. And we don't need a width on those at this point. We'll remove this background color off of page top rest because that was temporary anyway, that solid gray. And we'll leave the 2 divs solid gray, that way we could just see them. And give it a border, color, whatever bright color you want. This is just temporary so you can see it. And now let's run this in our favorite browser, locally, and you can see what you have. So judging by my borders, I just need to make these a little higher than 42, maybe 43. Actually 44, and then no border. That should do it. Now if I look at this, it'll be just a gray block. But there'll be 2 divs there, don't you worry. So now basically within this first div, you can put all of the links or whatever items that you want to be in this darker top gray bar. And then in the bottom div that's under that one, you can put all the links and junk that you want in that bottom gray bar. So now you have the content areas ready to get that done. So let's take the background color off, and we can start to put things within those. Now I know in this bottom div I'm going to want a link to my home page, which was the little house right here, that little graphic. I want that and some more links right next to it. So we can copy this href. If it's going to go to the home page of the site, you can just copy that href and put it right there. And you can take this image tag if you want and put it right inside of that A tag. Just make sure we have the right name. So let's look in that folder, root, images, and it's home.png. So this is home.png, alt, home, and title. I don't really want to, yeah, we'll just put a title of home. That way when the user's mouse goes over it, a little caption of home comes up. Now see what you have, and it will be probably tucked in the right corner, or the top left corner. So you see how it's tucked in the top left corner? There's a few different ways in CSS to skin this cat. You can push this down several different ways in CSS. I'll just show you one way to get this down into the middle. Actually, I've decided I want to target these 2 divs independently, so I'm going to put menu 1 for that one, and then the one under it I'm going to have menu 2. Oh, crap. And then up here in the CSS we just put a # here. Since menu 1 and menu 2 are nested inside of page top rest, we can just target them there. Page top rest, go in there and into menu 1. And let's make another rule for menu 2. This way you can style them independently because you might have different heights. They might need different heights, they might need different padding, they might need all different setup. So within menu 2, right by my little house, I'm going to have another A element, and I'll just put # for now, and instead of an image, that's going to say menu item 1. Now let's put another menu item in there. Okay, so you have 3 A elements that are your menu items. Let's call this menu item 2. And they can navigate to any address that they need to. You just put the address right there, any page. Now in order to push all of those links down without attempting to give them padding or anything like that silly, I'm just going to put a div to wrap around those 3 links, indent them into that div, and then I can use this sort of rule, menu 2, div, and let's give that a border of a bright color, dashed line. Let's give it a height, let's say, I don't know, 24 pixels, whatever you want. And let's take a look at that, see what we have. Okay, so now you see what we have to do. We have to push that div down a little bit. So let's see what happens if we give it a margin. If it doesn't work with margin top, we'll give it inner padding. Say 12 pixels. Now let's see what that gives us. Okay, that works. That's about right in the middle too. Actually, I'm not going to push it down so far. Maybe 8 pixels. And I'll give it an inner padding of about 4 pixels. And I'll remove the height completely. Now let's see what we have. Okay, that looks good. Alright, so I can remove that dashed line. And I can target all of the A elements that are within that div. And we can give that div a unique ID if we need to as well. So let's target all of the A elements within that div. And let's make their color the light gray. And their text decoration none, because I don't want underlines on those links. So now let me see what I have. Alright. Now what you can do is make these all block elements, or you can just give them more padding. Let's see. Let me pad them. I'll give them padding top and bottom of 0 pixels and padding left and right of 24 pixels. And let's see what that does. See how it spreads everything out? But it also makes the link bigger. You might not want that. You might just want maybe marginal space between there. So to get marginal space between those and not padding to separate them like that, you can just make them all float and be block. So you can say display block, which makes them a block level display element, and then you can float them left, float left, and then all you do is remove this padding and just make it margin space, and top bottom 0 pixels, left right 24 pixels. So now if you refresh, you'll have pretty much the same thing, but they won't be extending the links into area where they're not residing. The links is just the word or the button, whatever you're using. You can make these turn different colors when the user's mouse goes over it as well by just giving the A element a hover state. So you go A : hover. And then you can change. You don't have to have text decoration, the margin, any of that crap. All you have to have to change the design on it is the color, and all the other properties will stay. So you can change it to whatever color you're working with, whatever you want. Okay, now if we go and check it out, you can see they turn that bright green when the user's mouse goes over them. Let's just make this 16. Sorry about that. Yeah, that looks good to me. And at this point you'll want to choose your font now that you have text on the page. So let's go to our body element, and you can target the body element if you want and just choose a font family, and I'll choose Tahoma. And a default font size for all the regular fonts on the page, let's make it, I guess 14 would be good. You can make it whatever size you want, and then refresh, and you'll see how everything looks. And you can change the size, the fonts on these independently using this rule right here. You can just put an extra property of font size in that rule, and you'll affect just those menu items. Okay, now let's go into the menu 1 div, and let's also give that the inner structure that this menu 2 has. 1, 2, indent, and there you go. Now we can remove all of this, and here we're going to type in sign up, log in, and that'll be a link to your login page, but we're not going to put the address to it yet because we don't even have that page created. Now in the CSS, since we're working inside of menu 1, we can just copy this one right here, this rule, Control C, go up underneath menu 1 and put that new rule in place. Change this from menu 2 to menu 1, and you're going to target the div that's inside of menu 1. And you can go ahead and give it a dashed border just to see where you're working. So if I go and I refresh my page, you can see I have a new div up there now. And putting that in place the way I did made it to where these menu items got pushed down. So what we can do is fix their padding. See that margin top 8 pixels? Just make it margin top 0 pixels for a menu 2 div. Refresh, and they go back up to the middle. Well, actually I might leave that on 2 pixels. Yeah, that's good. Now everything that I want for the user, let's go ahead and change the color on that. Alright, remove the dashed green border, And what you can do is copy this rule and use it for menu 1 as well. But we don't want our links to be display block. We don't want anything to float left. We do want that color for our links, and we want that text decoration to be none. And for now we don't need any margin on those, but we do want everything inside of the div, menu 1 div, to be aligned to the right. We put text align right. Control S and then go to your browser, see what you have. There you go. Now all you have to do is change the color of that. Make sure the text decoration is none. Oh, this should be menu 1, sorry. And now if we look, and there you go. Now that's a link, and you can give that as hover state just like the other one has. And we're only doing these so specifically and independently because they're going to be special links or special menu items up in the header of the website. So let's change this from menu 2 to menu 1. Div, inside of the div, A tags. Any A tags, the hover, they turn green on hover. So let's test it out. Those do, and now that does as well. Okay? So when your user is, or your visitors are not logged in, this is the link they'll see. But we'll have some dynamic PHP in place soon enough to where when they are logged in, we're going to have special stuff up there for your logged in members. And you have that whole space, that whole stretch of area to give them things. We're going to put a search mechanism right here. So you got plenty of space for all kind of stuff using a header of this type. Alright, so let's go back into Fireworks and see just the graphics that we were messing around with. So this is what I started with in Fireworks, and this is how it's translated to the web using code, all custom code. We're not using any code that Fireworks outputs. We're just using Fireworks for make our separated graphics, and then we're using CSS to position everything correctly. And it's all hands-on custom code, that way you can make sure it all validates and it's all proper. Alright, now up in the head element, let's go ahead and link to our fave icon. And you know what the fave icon is. That's a little graphic you get up in the browser address bar and stuff like that. Okay, now let's start to modulate this template. So what we'll do is add another link element to our style sheet, which will be in our style folder, and it'll be named style.css. So all we have to do is go and create that file now. So go to new CSS. You can get rid of all that. Press Control S to save it. And you can see we're in our folder system here. Go to Style, inside of the Style folder, style.css. That'll be the name of it. So you can see we have style.css here now. So all we have to do is grab all of our CSS that's within our style element, Control X, and remove it. And you can also backspace that style element if you want. Now when you have Control X all of that CSS, you press Control V and you can paste it into your style.css page. And all you have to do is change this link to the head sliver.png. You don't have to go inside the style folder to link to that anymore because you're already in the style folder with this style.css page, so you just link directly to header sliver.png. So now if you go to your index file, you'll see none of our CSS is there, but if we check in the browser, all of our CSS is applied to the page. And that's because we're linking to that style sheet. Now if we make another page, or 50 or 100,000 different other pages, we don't have to change our style on all of those pages in the head tag. We can just change the style inside the style sheet, and all of our thousands of pages will reflect those changes that we make in one little place. Okay, that's why it's good to do that. So all of the major part of your site design layout you can put within style.css there. Now before we go any much further with the design template, we have to put it online and make sure it passes validation as HTML5. So you now have to FTP this file up to your web server, your live web server. That way we can properly validate it. Okay, here I am with the start of my design, actually online at webintersect.com. I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm just going to type into the search HTML validator, and then I'll click. Usually it's the first link there. It's the World Wide Web Consortium's markup validation service, and I'll just put the address for my .com right there. Check. Okay, we passed. This document was successfully checked as HTML5. That means everything is clean and as it should be within the file's code so far. The doc type is HTML5. Our encoding type was detected. So you have to have an encoding type and your doc type to make sure it all validates as HTML5. And you can also just go directly to index.php if you want to make sure it's targeting the right file that you want to check and revalidate. You can see everything's good. Let's check a CSS validation. Congratulations, no errors found in our CSS so far. That's great. So we're doing really good. So now when you finish your site, or as you're working on it, you can have in your footer, you can have a link to check the page's validation. You can, that way people, visitors come to your site, they'll know that your page is validated, okay? Okay, now I'm going to use HTML and CSS pretty much the same way I did for the header, just to customize my little page bottom footer. And I'm not going to show that on video because I feel it'll be redundant. You guys should have a good grasp on how HTML and CSS works if you're venturing into building a social network, for Christ's sake. You better have a good grasp on basic HTML and CSS if you're trying to build a social network. I'll punch you in the face. Okay, now in the page middle div, I put a space character, and then in the page bottom div, I put the copyright symbol 2013 web intersect. So in my style.css, I targeted those two elements, page middle and page bottom. So I gave the page middle a height of 900 pixels just temporarily because there's no content in there yet. Page middle here in the index, when you add content here, you go and remove the height 900 here. Alright, so let's take the header or the page top. Let's collapse all the code inside of it. So you can still see that we just have those three divs that we started with. Page top, page middle, and page bottom. Now inside of page top, you have some more content containers to hold the things that you need inside of page top. Now what we want to do is make this website design even smarter using PHP. So what we'll do is we'll go to File, New, we'll create a new PHP file. Remove all the content that's within that PHP file. Press Ctrl S or just go up to File, Save. And you're going to save it right next to index.php, and you're going to name it template underscore page top, and it'll have a .php extension. Save. So you have template page top.php. So now if you don't have PHP running locally, this will fail to display for you. Well, it'll display in Dreamweaver, but it won't display in your browser if you don't have PHP running locally. So you'll have to test online once you go and modulate this template this way. So right here, take all the code that's div ID page top, its opening and closing tag, Control X. Go into template page top.php, Control V. And now just save that. Go back into index.php, and you're going to add PHP code to include once. So we'll use the include once function. We'll close our PHP block. And inside of that function, we'll specify the file that we want to include once, which is template underscore page top.php. Press Ctrl S, and now in Dreamweaver, go to Design View, and you'll see that all of your graphics and your page top and your header is there, even though in the code view, all you're doing is running an include once to that template page top.php. Now the reason why you do this is because if you have 1,000 pages on your website, or even 20 or 50 pages on your website, you don't have to go into all of those different pages to change whatever you want in the header. Let's say a month down the line you want to change this link to say something different, or you want to move things around in the header or whatever, add new content. You don't want to have to change it in all 50 or 100 pages. So what you can do to help you is use a PHP template, which can just really basically hold all of the HTML code that you want it to, or whatever code you want. You can have PHP in here as well. But now, if you go to your index.php and you run it in your favorite browser locally, I turned PHP off just to demonstrate this on my local machine. You see? I get nothing. So you can't really test your design locally, but you can if you're using Dreamweaver by going into Design View. Well, what you can do is put this whole thing online along with template page top.php and see what happens. So put up the new index, style sheet, and the template page top.php. FTP those three files to the web now. Now if I go to the web where this is live and I refresh, you'll see that I have all of my header graphics and all of my HTML content that is within template page top. That way if I make a contact page or a listings page of some sort or whatever, all I have to do is include once, like I'm doing here in index.php, include once template page top. We're also going to do the same thing for the page bottom. So let's copy that line, go right under here, under page middle, and change this to say page bottom.php. So we'll make a template page bottom.php. All we have to do is grab this page bottom div, Control X, then go to File, New, PHP, get rid of all of that code, and paste the page bottom code in. Press Control S to save it as template page bottom. Save, and now you have the same thing. You can actually close those template pages if you want. And now in index.php, you can see how modulated this file has become. It only has 14 lines of code in it now, visually to you. It's including a whole bunch of CSS and a whole bunch of other HTML, but to you, the programmer, it's nice and clean. Look how nice and clean that is. So really on your pages, all you're going to have as HTML is the content that is within page middle div. That will be changing on all the different pages, so that has to be directly on all of the different pages. So you see what I mean? But your page top, your page bottom, even side menus that you want on the right and the left, those can be template regions made in PHP. So let's re-FTP everything onto the web, my new template page bottom.php, and all that good stuff. And you can see it within Dreamweaver. If you're using Dreamweaver, it'll show you all of the files that are associated. Even if I don't have them open, it'll show you the associated files to this index page. But I'm going to FTP all those files now. Template page bottom, yada yada. And now back online, I refresh on my live web server for webintersect.com, and I have my bottom, I have my top, and everything is good. And you can see my index file. It's nice and lean for production purposes. And in Dreamweaver, if you go in a design view, you can actually see all that stuff in there. Okay, now let's get page middle ready. So we'll go to File, Open, Style, Style.css, and down in the page middle rule we have already in place. What we're going to do, let's give that a background color of a light gray, because I want you to be able to see the box, the content container that is created here. Let's make its width 1000 pixels. You can make it a little less if you want. And let's give it a margin of 0 pixels auto. Remember, auto, this is the shorthand for the margin property, and you can put 0 pixels for top and bottom, and auto for right and left. What auto for right and left does is it centers that 1000 pixel div in the middle of the browser window. Okay, and that's what that gives you. So you have a content container right in the middle of the page that matches the dimensions of your header, the things in your header. Okay, but you don't have to give it any color. I just wanted you to see exactly where it was. And I have it set to 900 pixels, but like I said, you would go into Style and remove that 900 pixels height when you start putting content into that. And you would want to remove the background color if you don't want that gray on there. I'm going to be removing that color. Remove the background color, and I'll leave the height there for now, but I'm going to remove it shortly. So now you have page middle all ready to have content put inside of it. So we'll just bring that down a couple of lines, and right here is where you start putting your content, where I have this space waiting. Now when I go to make my next page, which might be my sign up form or whatever, all I have to do is go to File. I'll take this index page, I'll go to File, Save As, and I'll save this index page as login.php. And what that'll do is it'll load in the template bottom, the template top, and all the CSS. So all I'd have to do to differentiate each page is change its page middle. And that is a smart way to set up a website that's going to run online and dynamically. So if it's going to be a PHP driven website and have PHP script in it, you might as well use some includes like this to make yourself some handy templates. That way you don't have to change things in multiple files. Okay, so I think in part 2 we'll do just that. We'll create a sign up page, a registration page using this template. And then we'll just put a form within the page middle section that people can use to register their credentials to the site. But I wanted to spend a lot of time showing you guys how I assembled that header, just so nobody was confused about how I custom placed all my graphics exactly where I wanted them to be. And I'm not going to put in the search field until we have some content on the site, and then I'll show you guys. I might show you guys how to go and get yourselves a Google custom search engine for your website. That way you don't have to do any complex programming when it comes to searching all the pages and indexes on your website. Okay, so I will see all interested parties in lesson number 2.